for the record that all board members are present, and good morning to all of you. All right, we'll move right into our agenda, the administrative portion. I move the approval of the minutes from the November 6th, 2023 board meeting. Second by Mr. Pell, when you're in readiness. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
The ayes have it. I move to acknowledge Secretary of State Directive 2023-20 General Assembly District Maps. Second by Mr. Pell, when you're ready. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
The ayes have it. On to registration. The chair acknowledges and recognizes Mr. Hassani Week.
Morning, all.
Morning.
Hassani Wheat, Registration Manager. In front of you, you have the November 7th, 2023 General Election Provisional Verification Summary. A total of 5,777 provisional ballots were cast during the November 7th, 2023 General Election. All 5,777 provisional ballots were cast in accordance with Chapter 8 Provisional Voting of the Ohio Secretary of State's Election Official Manual, also known as Directive 2022-12. Directive 2023-03, House Bill 458, put forth by the 134th General Assembly. Directive 2023-19, November General Election Campus Instructions, and the mandatory step-by-step process for examining provisional ballots, all of which were issued by the Ohio Secretary of State's office. Of the 5,777 provisional ballots, 4,810 were confirmed to be valid provisional ballots. This includes 69 provisional ballots that were cast in the wrong precinct correct location that are eligible to be remade. 967 provisional ballots were rejected for various reasons. Those reasons are 541 that were not registered, 124 that were missing acceptable identification, 94 that were wrong precinct, wrong location, 46 that had non-matching identification, 41 that had an empty envelope, 36 that had voted absentee, 21 that had a missing date of birth, 17 that had a non-matching signature, 11 that had a missing address, 10 that had voted in the wrong county, 9 that had no signature, 9 that had voted absentee with a challenge, 6 that were invalid addresses, and 2 that were ballots that were already cast, for a total of 967 rejected provisionals. Some additional provisional data include 2,568 voters that had a name and or address change, 1,390 voters who requested and did not return a vote by mail ballot, 24 voters that came in during the SOS mandated 4-day provisional cure period after the election. Of those 24 voters, 14 of them had cured their provisional ballot by providing a acceptable form of ID. And 13% of all provisional rejections were attributed to not having a valid form of identification listed on the provisional envelope. Below is the provisional rejections comparison chart. 14% of all rejections are attributed to what can be improved through precinct election official training. These categories are not wrong precinct, wrong location, missing date of birth, missing address, and no signature. While 80% of all rejections can be attributed to information that the voter provided on the provisional envelope or from other circumstances. Amongst the categories listed are not registered, voted absentee, missing ID, and non-matching ID. The registration department is recommending that 4,810 provisional ballots from the November 7th, 2023 general election be approved for opening and tabulating, and that the 967 rejected provisional ballots remain sealed. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Wheat. Mr. Pell.
I do have questions. First of all, thank you for the additional information. I like this. Did I just notice this, or is this new for this report, that we've got the rejections based on the voter information provided and the rejections based on our own sort of error or things that we could do better. Is this new, or if I missed this before?
It is revamped, so it is.
Oh, okay, this is really helpful.
This whole page two is new.
Yeah,
The
that's
old-
what I thought.
yeah, the old one was just a pie chart
Right.
and was reasons that why we thought maybe people voted provisionally, which is important. A lot of assumptions there, so,
Right,
listening to questions that you ask, well, let's put that in there. And, and I think this pie chart, in blue are things that we definitely will address in training. The red will address through voter education. And, and so you see that our poll workers do get it right most of the time, and even up at the top. The first two categories, that's about 3,958 people who voted provisional. Because provisionals are good, they're a safeguard. Yeah, otherwise, these people wouldn't be eligible to vote, and you can see that that's the vast majority. So we also want people, we try to say that, provisionals are not bad, it's a good thing.
right.
And so it kind of does that, and then, again, we point out some other key information.
Yeah, this is really, to me, this is very helpful, the way it's now, the way it's broken down, and just two other questions if I may. So on that page, total voters who appeared during the 4-day cure period. And then it's 24, and then 14 who actually cured. So am I to understand that of the 24, not all of them were able to cure, only 14 cured, because it says 24 appeared. Does that mean all 24 were able to cure their ballots, or just the 14 that you've listed below?
Just the 14, those were the individuals that did not have anything on their provisional envelope. So they showed either a driver's license or a passport. So therefore they were able to cure their provisional ballot.
No, so of the 20, so 10 people who showed up to cure still were not able to
No,
cure.
the
their
other
ballots.
10 didn't need to come in to cure,
Oh,
so they
okay,
came
there
in
we go.
and they misunderstood the
Okay.
requirement to come in, so they actually had provided valid ID, correct, Hasani?
correct.
Yeah.
Okay,
And they came in and they were, we took their information, but in reality, they didn't
They
have to
didn't-
come.
okay,
So,
good.
so out of the 24, 14 of them needed to come in and were
and they
able to
did.
cure
Okay,
their
good, I
ballot.
just wanted to make sure, wondered if 10 people came and still didn't have the right information to
Right.
cure.
No.
And then my last question is, so in terms of the Ohio ID and the new identification, is 124 that had missing ID that will capture the folks who had the wrong ID or were not compliant with the Ohio ID law? Is that correct?
That is correct. So
Okay.
we believe that the missing ID, not the non-matching. but
That's what I mean, the missing ID,
missing
the 124.
Yeah, that they didn't have that.
Because
So,
presumably non-matching ID would be, the correct ID, it just doesn't match.
right, yeah, so they wrote down an incorrect, driver's license number. They transposed a
okay.
digit or
Okay,
something like
alright.
that, so that's where it would be non-matching.
Okay.
That
That answers my question, so thank you. Appreciate that.
and just real quick on that particular item, on the second page, underneath the table, there's just a little box.
Yeah.
Where we want, to go forward, we're
I
gonna
see
try to
it. Oh,
put
great.
that there, where we identify what that.
So 120, so 13%, 124 of the 967 we're gonna reject were related to the missing ID and presumably captures the non-compliance with the new Ohio ID law.
The best we can.
As I know, we don't,
Yep.
we can't always, but this is good data, these are good data points. Thank you very much, appreciate it. Okay.
Yeah, Mr.
I
Provide.
just wondering, one of the items on here is, on the page one, the reason for rejection, the last category is ballot already cast.
Yeah.
There's 2 ballots in there, and so, absolutely, these recommended that these provisional ballots need to be rejected. However, and part of this, and I don't know if this, or just takes a motion that deals with this, but then there also is the thing where these people actually did cast 2 ballots.
Yeah.
And so the after thing, what we want to do as a body, whether it's a letter or whatever it may be, I don't know if you want to take all of that at one time, or if you just want to deal with, these are good to open, these stay sealed, and then we circle back, but.
So we got an email on that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll take this in 2 parts. So the first part, based on Mr. Weeks' report, I move to open 4,810 provisional ballots and keep 967 sealed.
Second.
Okay, any unreadiness, all in favor, aye? Aye, the ayes have it. And then, Mr. Pilani, as you were talking about these two voters, you just give us a little information, but I think we'll take that as a separate, motion.
Sure. So, we don't have this happen very luckily, it happens very often in Cuyahoga, but there are two individuals in this election who did cast two ballots, in this election. However, each individual only had one ballot count for tabulation because the second ballot was a provisional that we were able to process. The first individual is a registered Cuyahoga County voter who went to her polls on election day, did a regular check-in, got her ballot, marked her ballot, put it through the scanner. After scanning her ballot, became upset with herself that she mismarked one of the things. She voted in a way that she didn't want to on one of the items on the ballot. She asked the poll workers for another ballot to cast, and the poll workers correctly said, sorry, you didn't have that, you already cast your ballot. So she left the poll place. She came down here then on election day, so she did that on election day. The polls came here on election day, where we are open for select items, and requested another ballot here. Staff met with her, explained to her that, again, you can't vote again, you already did that. It's unfortunate that you mismarked your ballot, but that's just the way it happens. She was pretty persistent that she was gonna get another ballot and she wasn't leaving until she did. So we did provide her with the ballot in a provisional process, letting her know that this ballot most likely will not count, but kind of to subdue the situation and get it done, that's what happened. So she voted that provisional ballot here after talking to staff and knowing that she wasn't supposed to do it or get it. And so we rejected that. So that is voter number one.
Why did we give her the ballot if we didn't, I mean, honestly, was it,
Making a scene.
oh, she's making a scene, okay. I just, you know,
Isn't that what security's for?
yeah, I'm not so sure we should have given her, if we knew that she, and she's not entitled to another ballot, this is just me, I mean, I wasn't there, so I won't
Right.
second guess you on that, but I just don't wanna set a precedent for if somebody comes down and creates a scene, we're giving them another ballot when they're not entitled to one,
Yeah.
and it's not gonna count, but, you know, so, just my comment, I just, and
Only because she just cast the ballot, so I mean, it's a little different than, so. I understand.
Yeah, so that's, and I hear you.
Mhm.
So that's voter number one. Voter number two goes into this election registered in Ottawa County. As a registered voter of Ottawa County, requested an absentee ballot, got that ballot, returned the ballot to that board of elections. Then appeared here, and he did that in October. On November 1st, came here for early in-person voting, address change, and we correctly, at that point, we correctly processed him, gave him a provisional ballot for where he had now moved to
Into Cuyahoga.
Cuyahoga County, and did that. So then through the process, when staff post-election are processing the provisional, this individual comes up as not registered in Cuyahoga County.
Right.
The next step is then you go to the statewide voter registration database to see are they registered within the state for 30 days. Well, was found registered Ottawa County individual. So then part of the process, assigning his team then reach out to Ottawa and say, hey, did this person vote? And this person did vote. So then we go ahead and we reject that provisional ballot. Had the person not voted in Ottawa, ours would count. They did vote, so then we reject it. And now that's good of that person. We do not have an email or a phone number, which we try to look to see if we could reach out and say, why did you do this? And we haven't been able to do that.
So we have the Cuyahoga County address, though.
We have that address, so we can send a letter. But when you're trying to process the provisionals in that short window, we don't do that. So those are the two scenarios, different fact patterns, but at the end of the day, ultimately, two ballots in play of which previously our provisional ballot will remain sealed.
Okay, so we've already included in the original motion, those two, votes are rejected and remain sealed. Now it's really up to the pleasure of the board to decide if we want to pursue any action on this, we could simply write a letter to them stating that this is not acceptable and don't do this, or we could, refer it.
I would refer it.
Sure, Secretary of State, the chair can, entertain the motion that, the board would desire to do.
I don't know, those specific scenarios are a little troubling to me. One person knew they cast the ballot and made a scene. I think that's more than a letter. I don't think the letter would be effective either in that scenario. If it sounds like it was a very heated exchange. And then the other person, I mean, they voted and it's such a short time frame. I think more explanation or investigation is needed, particularly going county to county. So I think a referral is appropriate.
Is that a motion?
I'll make that
Okay,
motion.
so it's moved by, Ms. Sticken. Is there a second?
I'll second for the purpose of the discussion. I mean, is there a recommendation from you guys? See, I'm troubled by the first person. I mean, we gave the person the ballot. Now we're gonna report them. It seems to me that's our bad. I mean, we shouldn't have given them the person the ballot. I just think, you know, at some point we have to be the grown-ups in the room and do what we're supposed to do. So, I mean, I'm a little troubled about, you know, sending that on, but I mean, you know, I'm not convinced that we shouldn't. The second person, I mean, yeah, come on, you know, these people should know better. It is really the view I have on both situations, but what is your recommendation? Cause you see this more than that, and I think we should be treating everybody the same. Every voter should be treating the same. Every situation is a little different, I get that, but if we're sending letters to folks to say, don't do this again, you know. And then I'm not so quite sure about what the integrity, I like the integrity office. I don't wanna send every little thing to them, cause then they'll be like, what the heck are you guys doing? It's not like we, you know, are we determining, we have a hearing? I think when we referred before, there were matters where we had a hearing, we made some sort of findings, and then we sent to the integrity office. So I have a little unreadiness about referring at this moment, only because we haven't done any initial footwork about, you know, sending a letter or something, having a hearing first. And maybe we don't have to do that with the integrity office. I'm not really sure what the process is. Okay, they will just do all that. Okay.
Yeah.
What's your recommendation?
I
Is the question.
kind of, because we were able to capture a provisional ballot and reject it, and they only had actually one ballot cast. I like to kind of build with a letter, you know, pointing out that this is what you did, this is the law, don't do it again, kind of like your one bad type of thing. We keep it, a record of it in the system. And if we see this happens again, you know, then they've been put on notice and they've gotten a letter for that. The actual person from Ottawa to over here, I agree, it was a short window of time.
Yeah.
But people don't know the election rules, so maybe you thought, well, they're not gonna count it because I actually moved over to another county. I don't know, we haven't talked to them.
Right.
So, you know, I just don't know.
Wait, do we talk to them? I mean, will you reach out to, I mean, or is the letter the communication what you're planning on?
Well, we can do different things. We can send him a letter asking him to contact us. And because we want to talk to him and see, and it doesn't have to be at an official hearing, it can be call staff and we can gauge exactly where his mindset was on that. And then based on what we learned, then we can come back and say, this is what we found, in that situation.
And typically, if ahead of time, we do have like things that we can use to try and track people and get their phone number and email. Unfortunately, this guy didn't show up at all. But typically what we would do is we would reach out to find out, okay, does this sound like he was just confused or whether he was trying to get something through, so.
But also, when we did this process before we had this commission, and one of their goals is to look at people who vote twice and clear them and talk to them, the way you guys don't have to. So I just, for purposes of being redundant, just a thought, so.
Well, the motion on the floor is to refer, so that's what we're prepared to deal with
Yeah.
right now. So, Mr. Kennedy.
I don't want to go against the board, but I kind of agree that we should have initial contact with the county first.
This is an action we have to take today, right? I mean, you
No,
could well call or get some additional information, and then we could actually make a decision after you have a little more information.
Yes.
First voter, honestly, I don't know what other information she demanded, and we acceded to her demands, I mean, or his, I don't know what it is. I tend to be of the view that, most voters are, may be confused, or they're so determined to get their vote to count that, they don't know these very sophisticated election rules, but voting twice is not really that difficult to know, you can't vote twice, so I'm just saying, so I always try to give the voter the benefit of the doubt for sure, but I think that, I kind of would like to see if they can reach that voter, and then if you come back and then
Can we
refer.
table it maybe?
Yeah.
Because we're meeting on the 28th, right? Yeah.
Could we give them,
Draw that motion.
All right, so knowing that we're gonna discuss this on the 28th, but I can withdraw, and then we'll revisit this on the 28th.
that sounds good.
Right.
Yeah, I, just from experience working at polls, and this isn't super uncommon. And, I've even seen voters press poll workers to retrieve their ballot from the scanner.
Yeah.
And, some poll workers that maybe keep in mind in training, they think that's a good idea. Just
They may
saying.
think it's a good idea, but if they don't do it, then well, if they're not doing it, then that's a good. I do think though, we need to be really clear, when we can't accede to a demand that, is unlawful, I mean, it's not lawful, so we don't want people coming down and just the person who screams the loudest, somehow we're gonna change the rule, I mean, that just doesn't make any sense to me. But I kind of like the idea of I like to give the voters the benefit, that especially this person, the benefit of the doubt until we learn otherwise, and then I would support a motion to refer after we have a little more information, do a little further investigation.
So to clarify for me, that the Ottawa, I understand that, getting more information on that one. What additional information do we need on voter one? Could we, either, I don't know what else.
Maybe a letter.
Yeah.
End up making the notation somehow for future.
Yeah, I would just, once you cast the vote, according to the state law, you can't undo what you did. And then to Ms. Chavelle's point, that becomes an internal thing that we have to just reiterate with staff, that we have to take other actions.
So go
Just to
ahead.
be clear, she had put the ballot through the scanner.
Yes, she had already
Okay,
cast the vote.
We had voters remorse
Yeah,
on an
okay.
issue.
Okay, there we go, all right.
So I think that would suffice.
So voter one will do a letter, send it out. Doesn't mean it can't be revisited again, but we'll do that first step with on voter
Maybe
two.
a statement from the staff for conduct was that for here, or some information on that, was it something that the staff felt that much pressure to give her a ballot? Was she abusive towards staff? Those are things maybe I'd like to know. Was she told by them, you cannot get this ballot? Did they feel like they had to give it to her? I'd like a little more information on that.
Okay. So we can do, so we'll send her a letter, but we'll also get more information for that, which we will be able to provide.
Why don't we wait until the 28th before we send her a letter, because if we may have facts that determine that we might want to treat her a little differently, or is it, I'm saying her, I don't know.
Yeah.
Or if we're gonna send both letters, let's just take the action on them together, if that's okay. Just want to discuss it on the 28th and figure out how to proceed.
The
That
only
makes
thing-
sense.
Yeah, let's treat them together in one decision.
The only thing we needed to do today, you already did,
Right.
which was the first motion.
Okay.
Now, I just want to be realistic with Thursday and Friday being holidays and the 28th being Tuesday, we will send a letter to the Ottawa person. I don't know by the time he gets that and gets back to us, so I don't know if the December 18th meeting is more realistic. Well, we'll let you know what we know, but we may not be able to connect with him just because of the truncated, work it's already next week and a couple holiday days in there, so.
And we're dealing with the US Post Office, so that's another issue we're gonna talk about today, so it may not get there.
Well,
Depends where you mail it from, huh? What is that about? It feels that way.
Good, I think we finished the registration this week, thank you. All right, on to candidate and petition services, I move to acknowledge the retirement, the intent to retire from elected office of Irene T. Gallagher, 8th District Court of Appeals Judge, term ending January 2nd, 2025.
Second.
Everybody, Mr. Powell, all in favor, aye? Aye, that's carried. And on to new business, we will now turn to Director for live.
Okay.
Chairman, did the board vote and say all in favor for opening, or did we
Yes.
already?
Yeah, we did.
Yes,
I
we did.
For opening and keeping those sealed, like the other.
Yeah, we did vote on that part of it, and then I think for the other, it was just
That was,
discussion on
that
the
motion
other.
was taken off.
So, yeah, okay, all right.
All right, so then on the Director.
Okay, so I'm gonna give a November 7th update. I wanna start off though, just with this, reading the statement on that particular election. The Cuyahoga County Board of Elections conducted a successful November 7th general election with the efforts of those who served as poll workers. As can be expected in any election, there were unforeseen challenges staff encountered on election day. Staff and the poll workers put forth their best efforts to navigate through these encounters. On election day and up to this point in time, staff learned more about the experiences poll workers and voters experienced on election day and use this knowledge in preparation of the official certification. The Bay Presbyterian Church served as a polling location on election day. There were 4 precincts assigned to this location, with 3 ballot scanners allocated to the location. These 3 scanners were utilized throughout the day for voters to cast ballots. After the close of polls, the poll workers engaged in the ballot scanner processes to shut down these machines. 2 of the 3 machines shut down without incident. The 3rd machine seems to have had a software freeze at some point near the end of the shutdown process and did not fully cycle through the shutdown process. The machine results report also did not print correctly. It seems the paper roll became jammed and would not advance when printing. The poll workers remembered their training to not leave the memory devices in the ballot scanners and removed and placed all 3 memory sticks in the correct transport case for delivery back to the board offices. The poll workers did make a simple notation that they had problems with closing one of the memory sticks. Upon receiving the memory sticks and physical paper ballots on election night at the board offices, staff were unsure if the memory stick in question would correctly tabulate the ballot scans from the respective machine. Following established board procedures, staff scanned what they believed to be the ballots from all 3 scanners from Bay Presbyterian Church and upload those results on election night for use in the unofficial results. It was found in the dates following election day during the board's post-election ballot audit that not all the Bay Presbyterian Church poll location ballots were scanned on election night. This was found through a comparison of the number of electronic poll book signature check-ins from the location, the unofficial results, and the number of pages counted during the post-election ballot audit scan. Upon finding out this information, staff sent an email to the contested candidates impacted by this finding to make them aware that additional ballots would be included in the official results for their contests. Since election night, at no time has the Board of Elections not been in custody of all the ballots and memory sticks from the Bay Presbyterian Church polling location. It is the board's regular operating procedures to scan the paper ballots from election day if there is or appears to be a problem with the ballot scanner on election day. It is also the board's regular operating procedures to conduct a post-election audit scan on as many polling locations as the time allows during the official certification process. Absolutely nothing nefarious transpired during this process, and the board staff and poll workers conducted their duties with integrity. There are no internal bad actors in this matter. Further, the board was and continues to be transparent with the impacted candidates from the onset of identifying this issue. Staff answered questions of the candidates or their representatives during last week's public test of the automatic tabulating equipment to what we believe to be their satisfaction. The unofficial results are just that, unofficial, and serve as preliminary results for the election. By statutory design, there is a multiple weeks long period of time for boards of elections to conduct their post-election duties and have all items in place for the official certification of results. Per Ohio election law, no intermediate election results can be published between the unofficial election results and the official election results. Official certification for the November 7th general election will occur on November 28th with all ballots from the Faith Presbyterian Church poll location included, in addition to valid provisional ballots and valid post-election ballots be included in that certification. Also on election day, there were a few of the 289 polling locations that exceeded election day turnout predictions and needed additional ballots. These poll locations were primarily located in Lakewood, Walton Hills, and Valley View. To create the November 7th, 2023 ballot order, staff looked to the election day turnout in the August 2023 special election and November 2022 gubernatorial general election. Whichever turnout was larger on a per precinct basis, 105% of that number of ballots was ordered, plus an additional 25 ballots per precinct, plus 115% of the number of provisional ballots cast in that like election. This formula was sufficient for 97 to 98% of the precincts in the election. In the 2 to 3% of precincts where it was not sufficient, these locations were voting at near presidential year turnout levels. And in cities such as Lakewood, the ballot matter was not uniform across the city, with about half of the polling locations being impacted with higher turnout. The turnout happened in pockets. Throughout the day, staff monitored election turnout and identified that some precincts were turning out higher than expected. At approximately 1:30 p.m., an order for additional ballots for select locations was placed with Midwest Direct. These order determinations were primarily made looking at the morning turnout. Staff expected this ballot order to make it out into the field around 5 p.m. Around 5 p.m., I was informed by Midwest that supplemental ballot orders were delayed in getting out into the field and were being dispersed as quickly as possible on a rolling basis as the ballots were being printed. A little before 6 p.m., board staff began to print supplemental ballots at the board's office and prepared them for delivery into the field, being unsure as to when the Midwest deliveries would arrive. Board staff were dispatched into the field to deliver either pre-printed supplemental ballots and or blank ballot stock for use in the ADA voting machine, which is also a ballot on demand printer. While the supplemental ballots and ballot stock were being printed and transported, staff spoke with poll workers, teaching them how to print ballots on demand from the ADA machine if needed and until supplemental ballots arrived. Staff instructed poll workers to not send anyone away from the polling locations while the on-demand ballots were being printed and until supplemental resources could be delivered. The poll workers did an excellent job during this challenging situation. Staff have already met to discuss improvements to the supplemental ballot printing process. We are trying to determine a more efficient way to monitor ballot usage and will be proactively training voting location managers on the ballot on demand process. When ordering election day ballots, staff are balancing not overloading the ballot bags so they weigh more than 40 pounds, that they can logistically be delivered to and from the polling locations with reasonable effort, and be cognizant of tax dollars spent on these materials that ultimately need to be stored for 3 to 22 months post-election. The board staff will be taking the necessary steps to ensure that 100% of poll locations have the ballots that they need to execute an election. And then I have some general updates.
So that, I appreciate the statement because that answers a lot of the questions that I had and a lot of the inquiries and phone calls that, we've been getting on the ballot shortage issue and then the situation at Bay Presbyterian. So did we have at any other locations this issue with sort of the software glitch and are we concerned about, we talked to Clear Ballot about whether this is an ongoing issue? I mean, no election is perfect. I commend, it was amazing turnout and we know you don't have a crystal ball. And it sounds like, the formula that we use has worked every other time. And this was, who knew that these issues would be, so resonate with everybody. So I totally get that. I'm not trying to beat you up, just trying to figure out ways that we can improve, and it sounds like you're already there. But is this an issue that we need to talk to Clear Ballot about? What other proactive things are we doing? And thank God for audits. That's why we do audits to determine that where there's irregularity.
So
Can I piggyback off her question?
Sure.
Because it goes to the same. Sure. Are you saying this was a machine issue or a user error issue? Because that's what I'm unclear on, or do we not know?
so the machine, the machine did not, this machine did not shut down correctly. It was going through the process
Okay,
and it kind of like got in, it like froze or got in a loop at the end. And ultimately, when it's successful, it will tell you to unmount the stick and it couldn't get to that point with that. So the poll workers, we always tell them, never leave the sticks in the field. And so the first two machines went through, no issues. This one didn't happen. So they ended up pulling that stick out and sending it down, which
and they had a note.
that was correct. So I think they like a little sticky note that they put on there or something. So that comes down to us. So now we have this issue there where we had clear ballot technicians on site. They were not familiar with the unmount issue. So, and so.
Is that what we're calling it?
Yeah.
Unmount?
That it wouldn't do the unmount.
Okay.
And so, and to your point, we had over 700 scanners in the field.
Right.
And this is the only one that this came to our attention. Now, we have talked to Clear Ballot and they're not familiar with this, but we will be sending them the stick and then they can do some analytics on information, encrypted information that's on that stick to try to see what they can get from different logs that are there to see what exactly happened with that process.
So no other scanner had this issue?
Not that we know of, no.
Well, we would know. What do you mean?
Yeah, yeah,
not
no,
that we would
yeah,
know?
no, we don't, yeah,
We either
yeah.
would know or we wouldn't know, right?
None of them did.
Okay.
No.
Well, I guess the issue, oh, I'm sorry.
That's right. Well, they wouldn't have been able to
Right.
balance
Right.
Yeah. No,
balance
so-
that night, because
Right.
they have to eat all that done, then they balance how many people came through the door, how many ballots were issued, how many were soiled, how many, whatever.
Right, so, right, no, so this was the only stick. So we thought that we had pulled all the ballots from the ballot shelving on election night or to go ahead and scan those in and get results. But we couldn't do that till after everything was done. So we started going through this process at 4 o'clock in the morning. And we thought that we had all the ballot boxes, all the ballots there. And so we scanned them, we reported. So then we go in the days after and we go to our regular ballot audit scan. What a ballot audit scan is, it's taking the vote by mail scanners and taking the election day ballots. And we do this with the election day ballots because we don't control what goes on in the field. We run them through, not tabulating, but trying to get a page count. And then that's what we do. And we start alphabetically, and Bay Village is at the start, so you see that. And going through that, they found that there was additional ballots from Bay Presbyterian in another box that weren't part of.
They weren't on the stick. They weren't on the stick.
Well, they weren't on the ballots that we tried to scan on election night.
Was the stick totally unscannable or were there some votes counted off the stick? Because there are votes counted obviously from Bay Presbyterian,
Yeah.
Were those from the other two scanners then?
Yeah,
Okay, and then you did say there was a note, and this might have been the only one, and I know sometimes there are notes because not everyone knows how to print the paper that we put on the door with the results from each stick, but I guess maybe, I know it was a late night, which I'll get to that in a second, but perhaps with the note that there was an issue with this particular scanner, that maybe at that moment or the next day, go back to that, because they clearly marked that there was an issue.
well, that's where at like 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
We ran that location's ballots through the machine,
Okay,
trying to account for their note that they had.
right,
But not all those ballots were grabbed from the shelf. They found additional Bay Presbyterian ballots in a different ballot box on the shelf.
that happened to be the ones on the missing stick?
They're from that location.
Oh, okay.
But were they from the missing stick? I mean, presumably they would have to be because we didn't have a problem with the other.
So what they do is you end up wiping everything out though, because your ballot scanner can take any ballot from that location. So it's not like this machine,
The ballots weren't sorted by stick.
they're not, the
Okay.
ballots are not sorted.
Okay.
All the voting are pushed together.
Why were they not together though? I guess that raises another question in my mind. Is that normal? Were they
Oh, yeah.
being different?
So at the
Okay.
end of the night, you have the poll workers pulling all the voted ballots from the machines and putting them in either one or two bags. They're putting that in there. They're not keeping everything segregated by machine. There's not enough. We've been doing that for years. Easier on the poll worker to do that. And then it's less likely to intermingle voted and unvoted ballots
Right.
in the same box. So that's what we do.
Well, and just to comment further, I appreciate your comments and answering our questions, because I still have questions, but,
Mhm.
and I know this is a process as we proceed to certification, we can get information. I mean, obviously the uploading so late at night, it's very hard on the staff, I appreciate staff being here so late. But also, I know there's fixes, because in 2024, we can't have that, it's gonna be a bigger election as well. And I just think, and then I know but nothing's final till it's final with official results, to your point, but, hearing Monday about these ballots, when we knew there might have been some issues Tuesday, I guess that would be my other question, to look into that sort of time frame as to maybe that's something we could have addressed sooner. And then the ballot runouts, I appreciate the analysis of that, because I mean, we're not gonna know what turnout is in 24, so having plans, protocols, in case this this can't happen again, or do our best. Yeah,
We're just, if I get,
Yeah.
jump in one, I mean, we obviously need to be good stewards of the taxpayers'
Yeah.
money,
Right.
but, do we err on the side of ordering more?
yeah, that's good.
I mean, it just seems to me, if the formula is not gonna work, it's because for a huge election, as will be
Yeah.
presumably the presidential, as it always is, do we just err on the side of ordering more and just eat the difference? It
There's
just-
ways that we could do that, I mean, you
Yeah.
can pre-order, then you also have blank ballot stock that
Yeah.
might be available, and I think that some internal processes will probably have to be ironed out as we. look at
So
that.
just so a couple of things, so like the November 24, you'll base that off of presidential turnouts. So you'll be ordering at over 70% per precinct of ballots. So you're looking to those comparables. So you're gonna put more ballots into the field. And we'll go with a generous, maybe instead of 105, it'll be 110 or 115 of presidential
Well,
turnout.
that's my comment, so
Yeah.
let's be let's be
Yes.
a little bit more generous.
Yes.
As opposed to err on the side of being more generous than stingy.
That's a fair point,
So
and actually order time, like if we know
And
that
then like that.
the lag, ordering time, maybe calculating like, oh, we have a hot run this morning in this one precinct, we're gonna run out by afternoon. I'm sure the staff does that, but just a thought.
Right, so how we're gonna address those one-offs is, we learned a lot on our printing ballots on demand here in-house, for that, so like what'll happen is, on Monday, when we don't have really in-person voting, all along Euclid Avenue, the printers that will all be set up just for election day print. And we'll have staff actually hired who sit there, and that's all they will do, is if as needed, we can do it and send them out on one-off basis or a full location at a time versus having to figure out everything at once, so that'll be beneficial to us. We're gonna put blank ballot stock out into the field, which we haven't done that, so that'll be something we definitely do that there. So we have, some of those going on, plus a more robust initial ballot order. Now, the crazy thing about the March primary is we have all those printing capabilities, but as you try to figure out turnout, it's a completely different formula, because it's all based off of number of registered Democrats, Republicans, and unaffiliated. So you're not looking to pass turnout, you're looking to how many people are registered of those specific parties, and then you're ordering 150% or 200% of.
But it's not just registration with those, it also depends on who has a race too, don't you think? I mean, if there's more competitive primary, let's say for president on one side versus the other,
Oh, so you're looking at all those things,
Okay,
but
you do?
well, yeah, but, right, so what you're not doing is
Uh-huh.
necessarily basing it off of those similar primary turnout, because it is a partisan primary.
Okay.
It's a whole different mindset
Right.
that you approach. So and so to your thing, staff did find this before that Monday, but
Okay.
in the post-election, whether it's being selfish or real, whatever it is, we're all trying to catch our breath. And
Sure.
people are in and out of the office at different points in time in those, because by the time you leave out of there, you're at 40+ hours on Tuesday morning. And it's not an excuse, it's just a reality. And so I think by the time everybody came together and we could have that real conversation was on Monday morning.
And I'll just add,
Yeah.
out of all the variables that Director Prelati discussed, another thing is you also want those bags to be reasonable for poll workers to lift, okay? Because we try to keep them at 35 pounds, less than 40. We've had times before where those bags, if we send them out, it's 70 pounds, you know what I mean? And to expect somebody to lift it. So just, again, it's that kind of balancing act between sufficient balance out there that are able for poll workers to lift, to cover all the needs. But I think part of our approach this time will also be to have those reserves better to be able to deploy, maybe where we either have pre-printed or have the abilities to print more ballots as needed. So just to throw that in, there are multiple factors and we do try to get it right every time. And sometimes everything doesn't always quite line up.
Well, it's one location out of a gazillion, I get it.
Right.
The main question for me, I know you were still in the middle
Oh,
of your, is, you know, as long as we, the voter, we don't want any voter disenfranchisement is the main issue.
Right.
And it sounds like we don't have that as an issue, or do we know if there's anybody? Any place I saw one report, one article or something that suggested that a voter felt that they have been told something and thereby, you know, therefore was disenfranchised, but then ultimately got to vote. I mean, ultimately, that is it. These are all ways that we can improve, and I admire and appreciate the staff and all the hard work, and I get it. There's a lot of variables and a lot of stuff happening. Just wanna make sure that there's no voter disenfranchisement and all the votes cast are counted. That's the goal always. There was also an issue, I think I read, you know, it took so long. Okay, we have said over many years, the goal is not to get it done fast, is to get it done right. So I, you know, again, appreciate the staff being here in the wee hours. But I just wanna make sure you could speak to voter enfranchisement, disenfranchisement, because these are issues, Bay Presbyterian and this ballot shortage issue where we were seeing, I got a few calls and then we were seeing some.
Ballot shortages, the one,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Alright, so, before that, I wanna also circle back on one thing as far as. We've already working with Clear Ballot too, for election night. So some of the reports that we had in the ES&S world that we had developed over the 15 years working with them that help us to do checks and balances. Some of those reports, their system doesn't currently have them. Clear Ballot doesn't have them. However, we have spoken, Brian, clearly more so with them. And so one key report, they will be able to extract data and give us this information on election night. Will help us to do one of the comparisons that we typically have been doing that we couldn't do this time as far as on the numbers. So that would be another gauge to help us look and see, wait a second, something still.
I mean that the numbers aren't balancing.
Yes,
Okay.
so we'll have that tool for March from Clear Ballot that we'll be able to use that. So it's not again, it's a kind of like a data report of information that it'll get, and Brian will dump that in, and we'll be able to do an additional comparison with our data that would help us see, wait a second, there's some of these numbers aren't balancing up. So I just wanted to know that too.
Voter,
Enfranchisement,
Yeah.
I think, I think the poll workers did a great job, because it's not easy, and everyone we have told, we talked to, we said, do not turn anyone away, and I think, you know, they got that message, and they were telling people to pause and wait.
and the wait times for the ballot on demand, printing off the ADA was about how long?
It takes a little bit longer, you're printing one at a time out there. You're printing it blank for them, so it's not as fast as being off, but it's still, their ballots, they're being produced, takes a little bit longer. So some people were frustrated with that.
What does that mean, a little bit longer?
Well,
I'm just trying to figure out, so if I tell somebody,
Yeah.
you know, hey, don't go, you know, we're printing out the ballot. What does that mean to people that have to, that go to work or have to leave? Is that 10 minutes? Is that 15 minutes? Is it
No.
20 minutes?
would it be a minute or?
Yeah, about 30 seconds a page.
About 30 seconds, a page or a ballot? A page. So it'd be 1 minute for a 2-page ballot. So that's what, but you would be doing.
And part of it was getting the poll workers up to speed on how to do
Okay.
it. So that will also be a training issue, so
Okay.
that they'll be able to hit the ground
Okay.
more, with the,
Yeah,
with the.
in the
top
event,
as well.
this
Yeah,
will,
yeah.
and we're hoping it won't, but this is the fix,
This
and
is-
this is how quickly you can implement it.
And a quick reference guide at hand, how you would convert it from an ADA to a ballot on the machine.
Okay, so that was the delay, if there were delay, if there had been delay, that
Right, so it's doing one per minute, and that whole process itself will be focused on more with voting location manager training for the March primary. And that is, or should be, the secondary safeguard. The first is getting ballots, well, the first thing is
having enough out.
more ballots. Then the second is getting pre-printed ballots to the location.
And the police
Then-
stop.
Yeah, right, in stock. And then the third is going to that machine, because it does that. So that's,
So we
It's
do
not-
not believe anybody was disenfranchised, that's the
No.
main, okay. And we're still unofficial
yeah.
process, so
Mm.
everything's okay.
And I think one of the hardest things too, for the people like in Bay Village, is you wanna know those unofficial results.
Well, and the candidates too.
I mean, that's what I mean.
Yeah, candidates are,
100% get that.
yeah,
I
okay,
guess that, what I don't understand, I understand that because votes do come in, provisionals, et cetera, we don't really give the results, but these were ones that could have been counted election night. I know there was a question whether this was revised code or a Secretary of State directive.
Yeah.
I mean, can you speak to that? Because I would like to see if we can just, we know those were in on election night. You know, I'm not sure whether we can do an amended, preliminary. I guess those are my questions. For the
Secretary.
candidates, because there's a lot of people in limbo because of this.
Yeah, no, Secretary of State's office, in their directive for this election, says that there's no partial or intermittent, results reported from the unofficial to the official.
Okay,
that's a directive.
that's a
Right,
directive,
yeah,
not a
Secretary of State
provider.
directive.
Okay,
If we ever had, Midwest, have to produce ballots during the day, Washington.
They have. They have done that over the years. It was this one, and we have a meeting with them tomorrow, just to find out why,
Yeah,
what was the
happened
delay?
with the delays, because we gave, 1:30 in the afternoons should be ample time. So I don't know if they had,
Problem.
if they had a machine issue or whatever that
Yeah.
went down, but I would have liked to have known that sooner in the day, so I could have reacted quicker with our team to do what we needed to do.
Right.
So you'll report back to us, let us know what the findings or results are of that meeting and what happened on their end.
Yes.
Would it have been necessary anywhere to keep polls open past some
I don't,
issues and we're aware?
I don't think so, and I say that because everybody had ballots, people who were there were voting, and when the polls closed at 7:30, there were people who were there past 7:30. They were in the room and they got to stay
Wait.
and vote however long that took.
Stay.
So it wasn't like, sorry, you're in line at 7:30
You come inside, we close the door and they can vote.
Exactly.
Yeah.
and you get to vote,
Yeah.
and that did.
So it was more towards disenfranchisement.
Yeah, no,
I mean, it's difficult at this,
yeah,
but and some people can, for whatever reasons, have a hard time waiting around.
Yeah.
Possibly, so those are always issues.
And so another item I want to hit on is, that was mentioned here, is we finished uploading those results, not because there was problems with going on, but it was because of this, now we're taking images of the ballot when they scan them. And so you have, literally, it was about 1 million images that then you're uploading. So depending on what the activity was at a specific polling location, meaning the voter turnout, we were uploading anywhere between 40 to 120 memory sticks every half hour. And the difference was depending on how many images were on there.
when did that become I know that's cumbersome and time consuming, when did that become an issue? Cause
This
that's
year.
the Secretary of State directive.
Yeah, that's
This
new
year,
for this year.
yeah, that's
We
new,
we never saved images
right,
in the ES&S world, other than we would save just a write-in image, and that was it. So we've already had conversations so one, I've had a conversation with the director of elections and Secretary of State's office saying, you're gonna have to help us push vendors to see what we can do to try to well, increase the speed of this, because otherwise you're just sitting there and something like a presidential election where you'll have more than 1 million images, you'll be there 7, 8 o'clock in the morning just pumping sticks with nothing, and we can't have that. So talking with Clear Ballot, there is a way, and we're gonna try this. We'll do it in a test environment and we'll go forward where you can upload just the numeric results and not the images. And then you circle back and you do the images separately.
Are they gonna have to, for a fix, are they gonna have to make some change to the equipment that's gonna have to go through the Ohio Board of Voting Machine examiners?
So what,
That's never gonna happen in time.
so what I just explained currently exists
Oh,
under what we have. So we don't need a certification change on that. But if they do something else to try to,
yeah, that's never gonna happen in time for the presidential.
so this is where we're gonna work on this, upload results, report results, and then circle back and upload images. And we have 2 servers, and there also is this, I guess there's the ability where we can upload results on the one, which will be reporting, upload images on a second, and then everything merges at the end.
What was the rationale for this new requirement? I mean, is there concern about, we have a verified voter paper trail. We have the evidence of, why are we uploading it? I mean, I'm just wondering, did something happen to, it just seems to be an unnecessary step. Maybe something happened that triggered having this additional requirement, but if we have a VPAT, why do we need uploaded images?
Yeah, I think, well, and our image is.
And there may be a reason, I just don't know what it
Our
is.
image is the physical paper ballot.
Right, well, there we go.
But
We have the evidence, so why do we need we actually have the.
I guess that brings a question to my mind though. This is our first time with the directive. Did we have a discussion with Clear Ballot before? Did we anticipate it would take so long to upload these? Was this something that what
This is
preparation? Yeah, since it's new, was there a preparation discussion with Clear Ballot or, I guess
I
that's
don't
what I'm
think,
trying to figure out.
we didn't know, I don't think Danny was.
Can we get a waiver? Can we ask the Secretary of State for a waiver for this?
Well, I
I
guess.
mean, small counties can do this and upload the images.
Right.
I mean, for the presidential cycle, can we see if we can't get a fix? This just seems to be, I get redundancies are important, but we're gonna have a problem if we have to upload all those images. Maybe we can get a waiver. Right?
Well, I guess it's another thing. When we have these new directives, if it is something different than what we're used to, maybe we do have a chat with Clear Ballot to just say, what's our timeframes? I mean, obviously wouldn't know, now we do know, but I guess in case there are any changes for next year, let's get ahead of it. It would be my
I agree with it, and I would say, I would guess that this was probably their biggest image upload that they've had in an election day environment, with that company, I would say, yeah. So,
I get it if you have a tabulation system or, the touch screen or something else.
no,
Why would we need to upload images when we have the actual ballots?
Yeah.
It doesn't, I get redundancy is important, but maybe, the small counties can do it. We're gonna be reporting the results 2 days later, well, I'm not gonna say that.
no.
Not gonna speak that. I'm just saying much later. I mean, maybe see if we can work with the Secretary of State for a fix that makes sense. Doesn't, because we have the, or maybe we can just get a waiver because it's just large counties aren't gonna be able to do that timely. I just don't see it.
Have you talked to Franklin County about how they coped, or do they just have different equipment? I mean,
Different.
okay, all right, gotcha.
Mark, you look, Mr. Chair, Mark, you look like he was dying to.
Oh, no, it stems from a change in state law that
Oh.
requires you to retain the images, for as long as you
So
keep
it's
the
a
paper
revised
ballots.
code.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
you don't need to,
That's-
it's
no, we
not
don't.
effective until 2025, though, as part of the budget bill. But I think the directive is making us, implement
Well,
it
wait,
sooner.
if it's not even required until 2025.
And it's just retaining the ballots. I don't know about uploading it to the Secretary of State. Are you actually uploading the images to?
No, all the images are staying here.
But if, maybe that's part of our request for the waiver, it's really not a requirement under law until 2025.
And it's
And we
just,
get a waiver until 2025, well, after the presidential cycle.
and it's just retaining the images. The retention of those images matches the retention of the ballot.
But we don't need to
physical
retain
ballot.
an image, we have the actual ballot. Seems like there should be a carve out.
I think I definitely
Okay,
think we can
might
work
be
through this for
different.
2024, because we need to work through it.
Yeah.
Like I said, and I've already given Secretary of State's office a heads up, that this won't fly.
Okay.
For something, so.
So it is on the radar.
Well, best case scenarios, you can segregate it that night, Tuesday, election night,
Yeah,
and like Wednesday,
yeah,
Do the
maybe it's
images.
just a delay to,
just delay it. Yeah.
Where the results would come in on election night, but the PDF
we
images
have
would be
time to do
captured
the
later.
uploading of the images. Yeah, there should be a fix for
Right,
this.
and so I think, potentially one of the waivers would be, it's most impactful with write-ins. So can we have an extension on write-in reporting and whatever it is, still the next day, but maybe instead of noon, can we do it at 4 o'clock or whatever
It
it
sounds
is?
like we need an extension on the uploading of the images. What, maybe I'm misunderstanding.
No, you just report the results,
Oh, yeah,
right?
right.
But we will have to get the images in to discern valid write-ins.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And so,
Right.
so having in exceptions where you don't need to report the write-in results, say till 4 o'clock on Wednesday. You have you have everything else,
I see what you're saying.
who's Congress and Senate and all this other stuff, if there's a write-in, you gotta wait a little.
Okay.
Are there any other changes with the revised code that will be applicable next year that could impact us in the same way? I mean, or that would be with directive, is that how we'll get the directive first? I mean, you know what I mean? I'm just thinking ahead, because it sounds like this change the law, it might happen sort of different times.
So every election, the Secretary of State will issue, every statutory election, Secretary of State will issue a temporary directive that is specific to that election. It'll be the unofficial, official canvas directive that they will do. So we'll get that for the March primary.
Okay,
The election official manual, those are the permanent directives.
okay,
That book is outdated. That book has not been updated to capture any laws. But there's different windows of time in which they can do that. So we're probably not gonna see an update to that manual until the summer of next year. Which you might see that, additional temporary directives coming to try to address some of the things. Like House Bill 458, a lot of those things are not in the election official manual yet, because you can only make changes so far away from an election and all this other kind of stuff, and with all the elections everyone's been having, they haven't had that window, that time to do that.
all right, so, but the ones we do know about, I mean, maybe we get a little lead time on it. But Clearfield seems to be a good partner though, like they are wanting, so. in
And
terms of-
Midwest has been a good partner.
And Midwest
so
is too,
It'll be
so.
interesting to hear what
Keep
happens.
on it and anticipate for next time, but, I just wish there was a way we could get the results out, but. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay.
Anything else?
Yeah, so then, so a few other things for November. Poll worker department, they've completed the poll worker payroll, they finished proofing that on Friday of last week. Today it was submitted to the county payroll for a PRS review, meaning that they'll look now and see does anyone cross the PRS threshold for a deduction, and then from there, they'll pass that on to county accounts payable, who actually produce the checks. We should get those checks in the mail on Tuesday, November 28th. It's a rough payroll cycle when you have the election kind of comes the second week of the year and with Thanksgiving. So of course, we try their best before the holiday, but it won't happen. For post-election absentees, that Monday, the 13th was actually the deadline for this one because of the Veterans Day holiday. So we have through last Friday received 1,904 post-election absentees, of which 1,264 were timely postmarked, received by that Monday and eligible for counting. So we'll have 1,264 additional ballots put into the official certification on the absentee side. Berman's, today there'll be just this one last poll location that they'll be delivering back to us. I don't know if you remember in August, we had some issues with Berman's, them trying to figure out how to deal with the new equipment, with the new cages that we had. On a kind of unexpected election for them, so they didn't have the appropriate staffing. They completely turned around. They gave us excellent service. They met every deadline. So we were very pleased. Our conversations with them, they heard it and they responded appropriately. And then this is unofficial, but I just want to put this on your radar. With the unofficial results, meaning no provisionals, no post-election absentees, as it sits today, there are 3 contests that would qualify for an automatic recount. One of them is Gates Mills Village Council. That was a vote for 3 contest, and the 3rd and 4th place candidates are separated by 1 vote. So we'll see what happens there. South Huron Winters Board of Education member, that was a vote for 2. The 2nd and the 3rd place candidates are separated by 19 votes, and you have to have more than 54 vote difference for it to get out of the automatic range. So we'll see what happens there. And then the Brooklyn Heights Village Council, that was a vote for 3. And the 3rd and 4th place candidates, they're separated by 3 votes. And you need more than 4 votes for it not to be an automatic recount. So again, no provisionals, no post-election absentees are included in this, but
Those could change.
this is how it looks today. And there are other contests that we'll see. You know, these are the ones that fall within that threshold. There are some others that I guess you could call close, but those are more, they're further apart.
More to be revealed.
Yeah, so we'll know that on Tuesday, when Brian does his official certification. So that's what I wanted to speak on as far as November is concerned, unless there's any more questions, and pass the time to Tony.
Thanks for that report.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll give you an update regarding our December 5th East Cleveland recall election. Regardless of the size of the election, there's some things that are fixed, and our staff is performing well as far as managing one election right after the next. So we're 18 days away from the December 8th East Cleveland recall election. Updates include our early in-person voting. Early in-person voting began on November 7th for that election. We've had 27 voters come down to the Board of Elections to cast their early in-person ballot. I want to point out that we are closed this Thursday. The entire building is closed this Thursday for the Thanksgiving holiday. On Friday, our normal operations won't be available. However, because of state law requires us to be open for the early in-person voting window, we will have 2 staff members here, Democrat and Republican, who will process anyone who might come on Friday, as well as security will be in the building. So, but again, it will only be for early in-person vote. It would be the only business that would take place on Friday. Regarding vote by mail, staff have processed 18 vote by mail applications, and 2 of the ballots have been returned. Regarding with the poll worker department, in this election, we have 15 precincts that will be spread over 5 polling locations. The poll worker department is staffing those locations with a mixture of hired poll workers as well as full-time staff from the poll worker department and other departments that will help utilize this as an opportunity to, again, be at the ground level of an election. I use this as an opportunity to update our training materials and procedures accordingly. One of the exciting pieces for this election is that we will be introducing and have an opportunity to use our new electronic poll books with the 10-inch screen. So 10X has provided us with the first part of our order, and we will utilize the new electronic poll books for this election. It has a larger screen, a better processor, and again, it'll be an opportunity for the poll worker department to be able to utilize those. And if there's any, although the screenshots are the same as before, there'll be a little change because it doesn't have a physical button, it has a virtual button. So,
But there's no material changes to the new, there's nothing to worry about. It's basically the same Yeah, they're basically the same except for a few.
Correct, yes, which is a good thing.
Yeah,
We've
poll
had
workers
enough
won't be
change.
confused because it's basically the same.
And actually for the voter, the only thing they'll notice is they'll have a bigger screen to sign their
Right.
signature on.
Okay,
But it'll give us an opportunity again to field test it. So when we go into the March, primary, that'll actually be our second, election that we'll be utilizing them. Election support will be delivering the equipment and supplies to the 5 locations, prior to, rather than utilizing Berman's for deliveries. And, we will be having we'll stick to the procedures and have a Monday night organizational meeting as well. So, more or less, it's a quick update on that election as well.
Yeah, so I just want to hit on 5 things, so, you know, we have excellent staff here at the Board of Elections, so they have been overloaded for years now with work, and it continues into year end, where we kind of have like 5 projects that we're working on. This is in addition to officially certifying the November 7th election and conducting the December 5th election. So just really quick, what we got going on here is the General Assembly redistricting, which is Directive 2023-20. So these are the new state, House, and Senate boundaries that need to be drawn. So it's a little bit of, it's always challenging. It's a little bit more challenging in that when we draw these particular lines, we have to look back to what the precinct configurations were back when the originals were drawn in 22. And if you remember, throughout this year, we were doing municipal ward and precinct boundary lines. So what that means is John Eddie will be doing a lot of things based on census blocks, smallest grouping that you can get, and that will we'll have to draw some of those. And I'm going to say the unfortunate thing you see census blocks is it can lead to new split precincts being created, because they drew these lines off of a 2022 map that no longer really is what Cuyahoga looks like. So John has started that process. The first thing is taking the legal description and creating a good map that we have. John has kind of done that. We have found at least 1 or 2 discrepancies between the map we got from the state and legal description, so we make the state aware of that. And then what will happen is this week, we'll start off with teams then proofing the legal description against John's work on the map making. What we hope is that next week, at some point, next week on our website, we should be able to post up what we believe is the correct Cuyahoga map. Nothing in DIMS will be there. It will be done at that point, but at least they can physically look at the map and kind of see this is where the boundary lines are. And it's not, what they did to Cuyahoga is not just a couple simple adjustments. You know, we have 11 districts, and now 9 of these districts actually have a piece of Cleveland in them. So they kind of like a spoke type thing where they would go in and they're changing all that up. So we'll see how this ultimately what this looks like. But we plan to have everything done, the maps, the DIMS work that we have to do, uploading everything fully approved, sometime around December 11th. The deadline for the project for the Secretary of State is December 20th, which is the deadline to file petitions for these offices. So again, we hope to have the physical map up next week, so candidates can kind of look and see what does this look like. And that'll be the best we can do. And then about a week before the deadline, we should have everything in place. And then we can't do any kind of petition review for these contests until that DIMS piece is done. So that is the redistricting. Election administration plans, I had mentioned that before. We are buttoning up the last few items. We hope that by the end of next week, we'll have it in a position where we can pass it on to Mark, and Mark takes a look at it for redaction purposes. So we have that, and then get that document hopefully emailed out to you sometime around December 8th. We don't need board action. The board doesn't need to sign it, but hopefully with the goal of maybe when we do it on the 18th, we can just get it signed and answer any questions we may have on that. So this is a smaller item. Secretary of State, in November, updated the retention schedule of documents. So we're trying to take a look through, kind of just get wrap our hands around what has changed. Whenever there's a Secretary of State retention schedule change, we actually here in Cuyahoga have to take it before our county archives. And there's this whole process where you get it approved by a board. They only meet a couple times a year. They're supposed to be meeting on December 5th. So we will take this Secretary of State retention schedule and have it incorporated and accepted as officially also Cuyahoga's, as well as any additional changes that we may want to try to make to that schedule. So we're trying to move swiftly with that. Electronic poll books, Tony spoke about using those for December 5th, but starting now, we're already starting to get some shipments of materials in. So there's a lot of logistics going on. Peter James is working with the county IT to figure out exactly what we need to do to donate our existing books to the Cleveland Metropolitan School District if they want them. So it's kind of working that angle. And then Fiscal is working with county IT on the logistics of keeping the new and the old separated and making everything clean so that we have clean inventory and actually getting inventory on all these items. Our goal is by about January 15th to have all the equipment acceptance tested, labeled, inventoried, and ready to enter into the preparation for use for March. And then the last item that we're working on is poll worker training updates. The hard thing of having a March primary one of the hard things after November is it gives you little time to implement changes. So the management team are meeting tomorrow morning to go over what things do we want to incorporate into poll worker training for the March primary, because by December 8th, we need to have our changes locked in. Because then you have to make sure everything is on the quick reference guides, is in the training manuals, it's got to go to print. Because training starts January 19th. You know, we want all these print materials here by the 15th so we can get them to the trainer. So it's a tight timeline, especially when you get the holiday schedule in there and printers off and closed and all this other kind of stuff. So, we're pushing to, get that done. So there's a lot of things to do between now and then, and of course, December 20th is the filing deadline, and then we'll have to have all those petitions squared away and ready to go for our January 2nd certification.
Yeah.
So, but again, this team that we have, 100% will get it done. I don't want to deal with any other team.
Thank you. Any other questions for Director, Deputy Director? All right, thank you both. Chair has not received any requests for public comment. And we do not have reason to go into executive session. So with that, I move to recess.
Second.
All right. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Right.
Yeah.